All right. Welcome to Spoken Sins, where if you give us 15 minutes, we'll show you a creator's soul. Tonight, I am privileged to have with me the great creator, Allen Hamblin. Austin, what's going on?
Not much. It is a warm for the Midwest, so we'll take it. 45 degrees outside.
It's been cold. It really has. Like, what the hell? Like, Florida had 40-degree weather this past week. We were like, for me, I'm from New York, so it didn't really get to me too much, but I moved here to avoid that.
Oh, man, don't you love climate change? Eesh.
Well, speaking of extremes, let's talk about what brings you on to our show tonight, the Extreme Championship Tournament Most Wanted. How did this come about? How did you get involved in this project?
So, as I'm like you in a lot of ways, that not just do I do create indie comics, but I love indie comics. I mean, I was probably reading indie comics before I was creating them for sure, and I follow a ton of stuff. And I Sean from the Extreme Championship Tournament posted a call looking for people to send in their portfolios because they wanted to do. And they didn't necessarily say graphic novel at the time. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna pay people, and just send us in some of your stuff." And I'm like, "All right, I'll send it in." And so I sent in a couple issues of Punk and Rock, and then man, I don't even remember how long later I get an email back like, "You interested in doing this?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." And and here we are now.
Now, you can still hear me, right, Austin?
Yes, I can.
All right, cool. Apparently, according to our screen, once again, you're not there.
Well,
so we're just going to have to wing it and hope that we're still recording because I think there was another signal issue. It happens, though. That's the cool thing about going live. Well, as long as we have you on here, tell me about the story that you're involved in on this great project.
So I'll jump first to what exactly the Extreme Championship Tournament is. It takes place in the future, and they clone some of history's greatest warriors, warlords, everybody from any time period and anything, and they clone them along with some genetically engineered monsters, and they have gladiator fights. And so this graphic novel, Most Wanted, has 10 stories featuring these characters throughout history, and I got to do Genghis Khan, and it was so much fun. In my story, he actually fights Alexander the Great, so you've kind of got a battle between the arguably two of the best conquerors of their respective time periods, finally being able to meet in deadly one-on-one combat.
Now, did you pick who you got, or were you assigned who you got?
They had a list of people. I think there was more than 10. There's like, whatever, send out the email, like, whoever you're interested in, let us know. And I'm like, Genghis Khan. Like, I didn't know, like, I won't say I was an expert before choosing him, but I knew like he was a ruthless warlord that did conquering. And I'm like, okay. And so it was kind of cool. And I like history. So it was fun to I wanted to make sure that as much, I mean, I know it's obviously science fiction, but I wanted to have, because I jumped back and forth between before he was cloned and to the present day in the story. So I wanted to make sure it was as historically accurate as I could make it. So it was really cool to kind of dive into the world of him and learn about him, because he's a really interesting fellow.
It is funny, like, a lot of people assume the comic book creators, we make shit up as we go. They don't realize we actually read a lot, writers. We wind up reading a lot of stuff, and like you said, you went back and you read about him. Did you read about maybe his fighting style? Was that something that you tried to check out to see if you could make that fit?
Yeah, I wanted to. So besides like the history, it was like, I guess it was more into weaponry and tactics that he used. Because and it's just like you said, yeah, people just assume, oh yeah, whatever. It's a comic book. They don't care if it's, I don't want to say politically correct, but they want to say if it's, historically accurate. But there's always that one guy. That sounds bad, but there's always that one person that's like, well, I know that this is about a clone fighting a giant monster, but he wouldn't have been wearing that, whatever. And I wanted to make sure I could stop that guy, and he'd be like, "Yes, this is what that guy would be wearing."
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense that you would look into the history of him. Now, because this is your character, when he was facing off, like, who wrote that face off? Did you get free control over it, or did you have to work with another writer who was deciding? Because they battle someone in the story, right?
Yeah. There's two battles. They battle the monster, and then he battles Alexander. So Sean was super awesome. Basically, you pick the character you wanted, and it was basically before doing the final script, shoot an outline over of overview of what I wanted to do, send it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, this is what I like. This is what we don't want." And it was super easy to work with. And then I basically just did a general overview. Then we got the approval on it. I went over, I broke it down by panels and by pages and panels. I sent that back over to him, and then we went from there, and we got to the final draft, and it was super easy to work with. They weren't extremely overbearing. The cool thing about the Extreme Championship Tournament book in general is that they have such a large cast of characters that I think some of these characters might not necessarily have been used in the main continuum, but we got to explore them over here. So that's a lot of fun.
Now, for those who just joining us that maybe don't know you as well as I do, what are your official titles in indie comics? Because some of us wear a lot of different titles. I know that I actually have a credit as an artist, although I really wouldn't call myself an artist, but I've been credited as an artist. What are your credits?
Oh, man, they're all going to be under writing. Man, I don't think there's anything else other than that. I think I've got maybe some like special thanks for like doing some editing of some stories, but nothing that I would take too crazy, But yeah, just the writing, and like I've done 5 issues of The Adventures of Punk and Rock and a full graphic novel on that. The Headless Hitman, Steel Wool. I've been in a bunch of small press anthologies, from anti-bullying to horror Christmas to professional wrestling. So I've kind of been all over the place in any comics.
Now, speaking of wrestling, obviously this has got a wrestling vibe to it. How much did you actually pull on your knowledge of wrestling to do this type of story? Because it definitely has that kind of feel to it. Was that important, using your past fandom?
Absolutely. So I always kind of thought when I was writing it, I'm like, if this is in the comic, this is a program, people are watching these fights, and one of the things I always think of is it probably drives my girlfriend nuts that sometimes when I go to sleep, I like to leave on, I'll get on the WWE network and just leave on an old pay-per-view or an old episode of Monday Night Raw, and I'll take my glasses off and I can just listen and hearing the commentators. And that was something that I always like. And I know some people, they'll turn on wrestling, they don't listen to what the commentators are saying, but I love that. So in my story, when Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great are fighting, there's actually 2 commentators going back and forth, saying things and giving the tales of the tape and kind of taking jabs at each other. And that was a lot of fun because I basically molded the 2 off of Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler when they were the duo on Raw, just kind of feeding off of each other. You have the straight man and the funny guy. So,
well, this Monday they're back together they're going to the Hammerstein Ballroom, I believe.
Yeah, they're gonna be in the New York. And I'm super excited for that because I love those 2 together.
It is a trip to be a wrestling fan with the 25th anniversary. And I know you've actually gone to the NXT shows, which is on your site, HamblinComics.com. And you met Drew McIntyre, right?
Yeah. Oh, man, that was my brother-in-law somehow scored us front row ringside seats to NXT when it came to Des Moines. And I've been going to wrestling since I was a kid with my dad. So like over 10 years. I've been to tons of shows, but that was the first time we've ever been ringside. Oh, it was so fun because some of the heels, like Andrade Cien Almas, I was yelling stuff at him and he was responding back to me. And at one point he got thrown out of the ring right in front of the barricade in front of me. And I was like, "Come on, man, what are you doing? This really isn't working out for you," or something like that. And had my hand on the barricade, and he kicked at my hand. It was really funny.
Now, speaking of fun, it has to be great to be working with Sean. How many but with this project, there's so many creators part of it. I believe that it is shown just on the page. I'm counting 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 creators plus, I don't think Sean's picture there, so call it 11 creators right there. How many of the creators have you actually worked with? Because I've worked with anthologies, and some people don't get this. You don't really work with a lot of the people on the same anthology, do you?
No, and so the weird thing about this is, of all the people that were involved, so comics are a small world, and they are and they aren't in many ways. So the artist who drew this Genghis Khan story, Michael Malapo, and I probably butchered his last name, and I'm sorry if I did. So he lives in New Zealand, and I'm in the States here in Iowa. We're all the way around the world. He illustrates the comic book Headlocked, which my friend Michael Kingston writes. So the second I found out that he was drawing the story, I'm like, oh, holy crap. And I was a fan. I've been a fan of Headlock since they had their second graphic novel out. So then I messaged my friend Mike Kingston, and I'm like, oh, hey, I'm gonna be doing a story with him. And I was psyched because it was kind of like a little fanboy moment. I was excited to get to work with him. And I'd never really talked to him because Mike I see on the convention circuit in the States, and we have the same kind of sense of humor, so we send each other memes and stuff. So then I started talking to Michael, and he was illustrating this. Let me tell you, he made me look awesome. And the story looks gorgeous. And the other thing, too, is he just did this week, they just had a story come out in the WWE comic at Boom. And I got to work with this artist. That's a cool opportunity for where I'm at right now to get to do something like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no one realizes First, before we get off the topic, give everyone an example of what Headlock is, because it is kind of a big thing in the indie comic circuit. There it shows all the time. Just explain to the fans, since we're talking about wrestling, what Headlocked is, because it really is a great comic book. Yeah,
so Headlocked is, and I can't remember the main character's name, but the main character, while he's going to drama school, he's in college, he falls in love with professional wrestling, and he decides he wants to drop out of school and pursue a career in that. And I know I've probably lost a lot of people when I said professional wrestling, because I get that there's a stigma or there's a thought with how it's going to be, but it's really like an HBO drama. And it's not one of those stories where everything automatically goes well for the main character. Actually, things are going really bad. But you can relate to him in the fact of, he wants this so bad, but he just keeps getting handed a shit sandwich, really, as bad as that sounds. And it follows him trying to, work his way up to get into the big leagues and encountering some of the veterans of the business and some of the important people. And it is, and not just as far as indie comics go, it's one of my favorite comics.
And it's funny that you mentioned the stigmatism, and if anyone knows about stigmatism, it's me with some of the titles I have.
Absolutely.
Wrestling and comic books really seem to go together really well. I mean, just look at the Comic-Con convention. I barely see a Comic-Con convention go without someone being there from wrestling. So is your experience that a lot of comic book readers of yours aren't fans of wrestling too? Because I noticed you said right away there's a stigmatism about it. How do you find that? Do they mix well creatively?
I think so. It's I think there's a massive crossover. A couple years ago, I did a story in a pro wrestling anthology called Kayfabe, and so I'd done an issue of Punk and Rock that was like a pro wrestling theme, but doing this one that was all about pro wrestling, I just found a lot of people coming to my booth and being like, "Oh, well, this is about wrestling," and then we'll get to talking about that, or someone will come by and I'll be wearing a Bullet Club shirt or whatever, and we'll sit and talk about that. And one of the coolest things that happened was at one of the local conventions near me, a little pro wrestling promotion that's from the area, they set up a booth and were promoting themselves, and I had some of their wrestlers come over and buy that from me, because one bought it and went over and told them, and I had like 3 more come over and buy them from me. So it was really cool.
Have you ever seen yet? I don't know if you guys, because I don't know how far you travel for the cons, but have you ran into it's Cosplay wrestling, I forgot off the top of my head the
initial. Oh, Shakira?
What's that?
Shakira?
No, I don't think so. They're a group that actually sets up a ring at Comic Cons and actually wrestles.
Oh, no kidding. I haven't.
Oh, it is awesome. I went live one time. I've seen it in, all right, I know it goes up as far as North Carolina, Raleigh. If you get to go to Raleigh SuperCon, I think they're actually going to be there.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it is one of the funniest things. And they're Skeletor fighting like the Guardians of the Galaxy, depending on which night it is, who dressed up as what. It's awesome. It really is a fun time, and they really do a great job. So, like, I'm seeing the crossover now even go into the aspects of cosplay and wrestling. So, and I see a lot of these wrestling books that guys are doing, and girls, of course, are doing these amazing books like XCT. And I mean, I'm excited about the program. I was amazed to hear that you were on for this one. When you told me you were on it, I was like, yeah, let's do a show about this right away.
Yeah, no, it's just like it's a small world, just like I said, which is funny because it was cool that when they posted the announcement for this and who was all going to be on it, that I had people messaging me like, "Oh, that's cool, you're going to be on that." I'm a fan of that already, and I'm like, "Oh, it was cool."
Well, it definitely got funded really quickly.
It did,
and it's kind of gotten a little slower, but it's getting into the last week. And I mean, you've ran a Kickstarter, you've seen it. It's like in the middle of the Kickstarter, no one wants to back your Kickstarter.
It kind of dies. Oh, yeah, it definitely dies down.
They act like your Kickstarter is no longer necessary. And you as a creator, especially anyone who's been there who hasn't made it yet in the middle, you start getting real nervous. Oh. What is your experience with Kickstarter so far? And when can we see you back for your Kickstarter, Steel Wool?
Oh, I don't know. That's such a horrible answer if I don't know. And I'm only going to say I don't know because I've got the script done and he's working on the art, but you know how it is when this isn't the thing that's necessarily paying your bills, how crazy life can be that, first and foremost, you got to make sure you can eat and have a place to live. So I'm not sure on that. I've got this and, I've got a couple other things going. And for Punk and Rock, he's actually finishing the artwork up, should be done this week. And we're going to do another story arc of that. And we're going to do all the single issues and then probably do Kickstarter to collect the second graphic novel when we get to that point again, probably around this time next year, to be honest.
Well, I mean, that sounds cool. And of course, as a creator, you're on the indie comic Comic-Con scene, right? You're doing shows. What are you doing this year? How many shows you have? This is what all the creators I know are talking about. Where are they going in 2018? So where will we see you this year on the Comic-Con highway?
Let's see here. So I will be as a fan, roaming around, I will be going to Planet Comic-Con in Kansas City and C2E2 in Chicago, which are coming up this spring.
I'll be there.
Yes, I saw that. I was going to message you about that. I'll have to meet you in person. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, we'll get lunch or something. I'm a pro. And it sounds so dirty. Like, I grew up hearing a pro is something else. Like, I keep telling people, I'm going to Chicago to be a pro. I'm like, wait a minute. Is that one of those states that allows that?
That's awesome. The beginning of February, Cedar Rapids Comic-Con, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'll be setting up a booth there. And then I have a bunch of stuff that I don't know the dates on yet. Around here, I do a bunch of library conventions, like one-day shows of towns that no one's ever heard of, even if you live in Iowa. But I'll be there.
Well, how is that? How are the library? Everyone keeps telling me, my sister's like, you got to do the library shows. And I have a 2-year-old, Jax. And I might actually bring him to C2E2 because he's also got the book. How are the library shows? Because everyone says I'm missing out with Jax because Jax might be the great thing for a library show because a lot of kids go. Is that true? Is it more like kids, not really our age?
It is. That is 100% true. It is. That is kind of the fun part of going. So it's hit or miss. I've been to shows where I've sold a ton. I've been to shows where I've not sold a lot, but I still do the email sign up, which helps. But that's what it is. And a lot of the library cons that I've been to, they will coincide their library Comic-Con with like a town festival or something, like Farmers Days or like Gilbertville Days or whatever you want to call it. And so that way they'll have something to bring the kids to, like, oh, they do the candy to get their rides or whatever, and then they could come over here and do this. And There's always a ton of cosplayers and kids dressed up as their favorite characters, and it's awesome because you know, you ask them about it. Some of the kids are a little shy and they don't want to talk about it, but, you know, be like, oh, you like Yokai Watch? And the kid be like, oh my God, you don't even know how much I love Yokai Watch. And they'll tell me all about it, and they're like super enthusiastic about it, and it's a lot of fun.
Now, I mean, how is punk and rock isn't really geared towards all ages, right? It's got some dirty.
Yeah, that one's definitely a teenager or older.
So with you, and you're like me, you go across the board. How is it creating for you? Like, I've got the table where on one end is, I don't know if you saw, I made a kid's table under the table.
Oh yeah, yep, I saw that.
Yeah, so I have the more adult fetish babies. I've got the monster book, which is like teens, and I got the kids book. Do you find it kind of hard to steer kids? Like, no, it's not really for you. It might look like it's for you, but it's not.
You know, and it's kind of funny because it depends. It's going to depend on the parent. I had a kid come up and like he flipped through Punk and Rock, and he's like, "Oh my God, this looks super awesome. I want this." And his mom's like, "We'll take it." I'm like, "Oh well, you know, it might not be something for him. That's probably for somebody a little older." And his mom goes, He plays Grand Theft Auto and video games. There's no way this is worse than what he sees on there," which is kind of funny because like growing up, I'm the youngest of three, and it's kind of like what they say is the youngest kind of, I don't know, gets away with whatever he wants to. But it's funny because like my sisters were like regulated on what they couldn't watch or go see. But for me growing up, my parents were always like, you know, whatever. And when I was going to comic shops in middle school and high school, they would, you know, the owners would be like, "Oh, I can't sell you that. You need to bring an adult in." And I remember bringing my mom in, and the book was Crossed by Garth Ennis, which I'm not going to go into what it's about, but it's pretty graphic and pretty horrible stuff. And the guy's like, mom's like, "Yeah, he can buy it. He can buy whatever. Anything you got here, it's fine. You know, he's my son. I'll let him buy it." And the guy goes, "Oh, man, don't you want to flip through it?" And he goes, "I can't really mess him up any more than he's already messed up, so I'm not really too worried about it."
It's so funny that you say that. Like, and I've said this many times, and this might be a controversial view, but I grew up with Looney Tunes. I grew up with like the coyote getting blown to hell, and I kind of respected the fact that there was this danger in the world, and you didn't want to be the coyote. And now it just seems like these kids, the cartoons that these kids have, they make everyone so delicate. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I agree 100%. Like I understand, you know, with how things have gone in the world, that people are preaching to be respectful to other people's beliefs, you know, and races and everything. I agree with that 100%. But at the same time, you know, people be like, "Oh, you know, your kid shouldn't be watching that." And Looney Tunes, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a perfect example, because like they were trying to kill each other with anvils and dynamite, and like look at all the stuff that Bugs Bunny did to Elmer Fudd. And you had like Bugs Bunny was cross-dressing in dresses and stuff, and now it'll be like, "Oh, you don't want to confuse children." And I'm like, and this is gonna sound bad, and I'm not a parent, so I get where people could be like, but like if your kid is influenced by a cartoon to the point of like changing all their views on things, maybe you aren't doing your job as a parent and teaching them and paying attention to them.
as a parent, I can say, and he's only 2 now, but I can already see it. There's a personality embedded in a child. They're born with an operating system. You can maybe influence that operating system, but here he comes now, walking through the house with an attitude because he was in a bedroom, and he's like, now he wants to be heard, and that's what kids are. They're gonna be who they're gonna be. Cartoons don't bring something out in your child. It inspires the child because they see something they like. That's why not every kid likes everything. I couldn't have watched Barney growing up.
Right. No, yeah. I agree 100%.
You know, and it's funny, like, because as I've let my son watch anything, I'm horrible. He watches Rick and Morty with me when we're on the road. And people are like, and I've had my sister be like, oh, even my wife, I can't believe you let him watch that. And I'm like, look at the news. There's never going to be anything worse I can show him than what's on the news nowadays. I remember my son a few months ago, the CNN was on. I didn't realize it was on, and they were showing bombing victims on CNN, and he had the most horrified look on his face. I changed the channel. I didn't want him to go further with that, but one of my earliest memories of my life is President Reagan getting shot and not understanding what was going on because people looked terrified. The news has always been the worst thing for kids to watch, and yet parents have no problem with the news being watched.
That is, oh man, I never even thought about that, because especially you saying that Reagan is one of your earliest memories. Like, it might not be one of my earliest memories, but one of my most, like, one that I can remember almost the whole day was 9/11 when I was at school. Like, I can remember almost that whole day, and I can remember how some people were like, had the fear of God in them, that were like, we're all going to be dead within 2 weeks. You know?
Yeah, I was in New York. That we didn't know what was going on. This is before cell phones. And you're right, kids grew up during that. And you wonder why all these kids are so nervous nowadays. They're living in a time period where it's not a nuclear weapon that's going to take out everyone, and at least they'll go out with all their friends and family. No, there's some crazy person who could just attack you and your friends because you went somewhere to see a theater or a concert.
Yep, you went to see a movie, you went to go have fun, you know?
Yeah, so I think we need more Looney Tunes. I think that's the answer. More and more Looney Tunes.
Hashtag more Looney Tunes.
Hashtag more Looney Tunes. Do you think hashtags work? I hate hashtags. I'm so awful at using them.
I do it, but I don't have luck with it. So I try.
As a nerd, the biggest thing I was let down for was the QRC codes not working. I love QRC codes.
Oh, so did I.
I had them on my business cards, and my wife's like, you have to let it go. It's not going to take off. But I'm like, but they're so good.
When I graduated high school, my graduation party invites had one on them. And if you scanned it, it would take you to my Facebook author page. My brother-in-law did it for me.
See, but that's cool. Like, people aren't getting technology the way it's supposed to be used.
That's funny.
That's why I like the Rick and Morty thing. I think that most of the people don't get the jokes that they're watching it. They don't see the character because I see these fans and I'm like, you're missing the joke.
It goes right over their head. Absolutely.
Yeah, like, because I see them at cons and it's like, do you understand he'd make fun of you for some of the things you're doing right now?
Oh man.
I like the whole what was it, that sauce? The sauce that he said he liked.
The Szechuan.
Yeah, the one episode, and people went crazy, and I could just see him showing up and being like, fucking retards.
Like, I don't give a shit about this. That was like once.
He's like, I forgot about that already. But moving on to we know what's coming up with you. We know where we're going to find you. The next obvious question to ask you, of course, is always, what is your goals for the year since it's brand new? It's a 2018. Everyone's talking about goals still. We're not in February. February, everyone forgets about goals. So since we're in January, what are your goals for the year?
So I made mine really simple, and it's write more, write better.
Yeah, I can respect that. I can respect that. And when you're going to the cons and all that, have you noticed a change in, this has been a big topic a lot, and I don't know if you've gotten caught in these conversations, where people are saying people aren't coming to read comics at the bigger shows now. Are you seeing that it's become more celebrity than Comic-Cons? Because I don't see it. I see a mix, but I don't see it.
No, there definitely are people that are there specifically for that, and I get that. But and I'll use this as an example. I had a little boy, and his older sister come to my table once. And the little boy wasn't interested in comics, and you could tell his sister had kind of drug him along. And his sister was probably like 16 or 17. She said to me, he won't read, and I'm trying to get him interested in reading. And I'm like, all right, I'll find something for him. And I talked to him, and I just kept on, like, what are some things that you like? You know, okay, you like here, and I found something for him, and he took it home and he read it. And I think that it's definitely, you know, a mixed bag. And like, you have somebody walking by, you don't know if they're a comic fan or a movie fan or if they're a drag along. But I think the market's there, and I think that sometimes we've all, as a creator, at going to conventions and stuff, you have your good days and you have your bad days. I mean, I've been to conventions where I haven't sold anything. I've been where I've done gangbusters. I think that sometimes an easier answer than I didn't try hard enough, or maybe I could have done something better, is these people didn't want to buy from me. I couldn't sell to them, even if I had a head start. You know, sometimes that's the easier route.
I mean, shit happens. I was at a Comic-Con, Tampa Bay MegaCon, right after Irma, and I was coming. This was like, you know, I was doing great for the year, and up until this show, I'd been doing great. Suddenly, I just couldn't sell in the last day and a half. And we found out later 40% of tickets went away. You can't judge anything by a show because there's different things. And sometimes it's us. You know, one of the biggest things I recently realized was I have all my WrittenSiNs stuff up behind me. Very proud of what we've done with WrittenSiNs. I'm eager to see it continue past me when I can't necessarily dedicate all the time I have to. This year, I'd love to pick up a successor to me to be fully in charge of it all the time for the future years, because I'm hoping to be a little bit more busier with my own creations. I didn't realize until I sat there, and my sister had said this when I first made all the promotional stuff. Everyone would walk by and go, oh, horror comics. And I didn't realize what my sister had said. All of my logos didn't speak to anything that I did as a branding thing. And I realized, like, I sat here right where I am now, and I looked at my wife, and I'm like, who am I as a creator? Because as creators, I don't think we understand ourselves that way. We create what's in our mind. We don't ever look at ourselves as a product. So it's easier to ask other people. Like, if I ask my sister, what am I? She'll say I'm an asshole. But I can't put asshole on a banner, you know?
You could, but you'd be at the wrong kind of convention.
I'd be at the wrong kind of convention. I know the conventions for that one. But for the Comic Cons, I needed to find something I was. And my wife looked at me and she's like, you're an advocate. I was like, I know I advocate for people on WrittenSiNs. I know what you're talking about. I was like, but what am I? She's like, no, think about every one of your books. Your kid's book is about advocating for kids. Dark Justice was about politics sucks, and they're all the root of all evil. She was like, your other book, And They Call Us Monsters, is about the monsters being portrayed in a nasty fashion by Hollywood. And I was like, oh my God, I really do have stories with a meaning. But then how do you put that in a poster? And I think that there's a lot. Like for you, how do you market yourself? How do you put yourself out there at cons? Like, what are your banners and your pitch go like? How do you describe yourself?
Oh man, that is
deep, right? Like you don't realize it till you step in it like me, and you suddenly realize you're not at all promoting yourself. You're promoting a website. And you're at a table for your books, not just a website. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mailing lists are great, but money's better.
Yeah, free is good, but yeah.
So how would you package yourself? Because now I realize I'm an advocate. If I'm not advocating for you know, sexual freedoms, I'm advocating for kids and how important they are in our society, or I'm advocating for indie creators like yourself and myself. What are you as a creator? So it was an interesting question I had to ask myself.
Oh, man, and you know what? And I think about this a lot. And this is one of the part of this is something that keeps me up at night. Is so 90% of the stuff I do is it's just a bunch of fuckery. That sounds bad, but like it's not serious, not to be taken seriously. It's to make you laugh, you know, make you laugh, or you know, haha. And then I always but my favorite stuff that I watch and read is usually the more serious stuff, the stuff that gets me like thinking or makes me feel uneasy. And so I always try to think of like, man, I wish I could write something that could really, really make someone feel something. That's not just a laugh. That's like, man, you know. But the stuff that I always find myself writing and enjoying writing is the tomfoolery, big word.
Yeah, I have kind of the same problem as you, but in reverse. I always mean something to be lighthearted, but all of a sudden I kill a character. And it's like Optimus Prime dying, and it's like, why can't just one book be happy with you? That's why I made Jax. No lie. I made Jax the Anderson to be able to make something that was very, you know, happy for once. Because I didn't want to always be that guy that were like, that dude kills everyone. Or, you know, he's always talking about something dark. But I definitely get what you're saying, and I love the fact that you're so passionate with that. And that shows, I think, through your work. Even when it's funny, it comes from a place where it's honest humor. You know what I mean? You're not, I don't feel like you talk down. Like Steel Wool, which we haven't talked about, is one of my favorite comics of 2017. I can't publicly make lists because of WrittenSiNs. You know how that would go.
Oh, thank you, though. That means a lot.
Talking on a video, I can say whatever the fuck I want, and it's why I like going live, because you'd actually have to watch the whole video to know I said that. And not everyone's going to watch the video. But honestly, one of my favorite books. Tell me how that's been received, because that was powerful. To me, that hit a lot of chords.
So that I was so happy with how that came out. And it's one of those things when you're creating something, like the process takes so long of like, writing, doing different drafts, and then art and letters and all that. And by the time it comes out, sometimes you almost you don't hate it, but you're just kind of like, sick of it. That sounds bad, but just in a way you're a little bit sick of it. So, and it was cool to go to cons, and I had somebody come up to me at one of the last cons I was at. They were asking what certain books are about, and I told them, they're like, you should do a book with a strong female lead. And I'm like, well, this right here, Steel. And it turns out she is actually a MMA fighter. She's actually having a fight tonight. And so that was pretty cool. That someone's like, you should have something like this. There's not enough books that are like this. And I'm like, I got one right over here.
It is awesome to have things at your table. I completely agree with you. And you have, like, to me, that's going to be once you do your first graphic novel, there's something that, like, even when my niece gets a little older, I'm going to make her read it. It's one of those things that I want her to read, because I do think it's an important story because coming of age is always awkward. And I think comics are one of the best places to kind of understand coming of age. Never a big Spider-Man fan, but I always read Spider-Man, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't follow it religiously, but anytime he was in something, he made me interesting. I just didn't like his emo ass all the time when he was always getting into trouble. I was in enough trouble. I wanted to see some good shit happen. But Spider-Man was like me. He was a nerd, always getting into some shit. It was like, you have powers. Why are you still doing them with all the things you're doing? And then he got, Mary Jane, and I just was jealous of him. But how is it to see the expression? Like, one of the biggest things that takes me back is when people come up to me and talk about how powerful Fetish Babies is to them. And I've gotten that, and they thank me for writing it. I don't know how to respond to someone thanking me for doing what I want to do. I'm like, but this is what I want to do. How do you deal with that?
Oh man, it's hard for me, because with my close friends, my close friends, my close family, my girlfriend, I'm the same way. We bust each other's balls. We give each other shit. That's what we do. I don't know how to genuinely. If someone gives me a genuine compliment, that makes me feel awkward. If somebody walked up to me and it's like, "Hey, sup, ugly," that I don't even know, I'm more comfortable with that than them coming up to me and being like, "I read this and I really liked it. You did a great job." I'm like, "Okay, take a step back there, bud. Please call me ugly or something." So it is hard to deal with.
I've always said it. You don't feel like you've done something till someone rips apart your work and tells you it sucks. Then you feel like it's okay. I made something.
Yes, that's how it's funny, because some people are like, "What? That doesn't make any sense," but that makes the most sense.
Yeah, because you need someone to be so passionate and hate it so much that you've acquired something that, like, someone told me that The Monsters was a complete ripoff of something that someone else did, and I didn't know what I was doing, and it was horrible. And I was like, "Oh, thank you."
That's the nicest thing I've heard.
Thank you so much. They're like, "But I didn't like it." I'm like, "Oh, well." And it was from, like, someone else's pack where, like, I gave it, because I give out my books to other Kickstarters. You've done that too, right?
Yep.
And they just came, like, I guess they really wanted to hurt my feelings, but it was the first time someone said something nasty about it. So I was like, yay! I'm sure they went away, that guy's not taking anything serious. Because I think I sent them emoji, because he did it through Messenger. Like, all the places to insult someone, a Messenger. When you give me gifts that I can give you back, like I was giving them minions and stuff.
Yay! That's funny.
Now, the final topic I do want to talk about before we go, 2017 was a very turmoil year, even in indie comics. We saw a lot with Comic-Gate and all the nastiness and all that. For 2018, as a creator, are you sort of concerned now about what you can and can't say anymore? Like, because we always had to behave on social media, and I tell people all the time, you have to watch what you say on social media. But now it's gotten to a point where, like, I posted literally to someone that this thing, and I think you liked it. It was think before you, pro tip, think before you post. Is this a positive or a negative thing, and what will its results be before you hit post? It didn't tell anyone not to post anything. I got the Freedom of Speech Act. People were telling me that they were professionals. They knew what the fuck they were doing. And I was like, where's this all coming from? I never told you couldn't. How do you deal with social media? Because we were talking about this. It's weird now because it's like people want to rip you down no matter what your message is.
I kind of like, and in the real world, I say probably way more inappropriate than appropriate things. So I kind of lived by the promote what you love, don't diss what you hate, because then you don't really have to worry about it. And I journal a lot. So if I watched a movie and I thought it was garbage, you know, I'm not gonna go on Twitter like, this movie was shit. Here's 100 reasons why it was shit. I'll write that in my journal. You know, if I enjoyed something, you know, I read a graphic novel and I loved it, I would post on and be like, oh man, if you guys are fans of this, you should read this, or this is a great read. And that's kind of the safest bet. And I used to argue a lot, and mainly I used to argue about professional wrestling online, and that really doesn't matter. And then one time I had somebody who I got into an argument with, like, message me like, oh my god, this is like an 8-year-old kid. Like, holy shit, I need to reevaluate my life. Like, this really doesn't matter, you know? Like, but yeah, definitely that one is promote what you love. Don't diss on what you hate.
That's such a true thing to say nowadays. And when people, like, I remember I had talked about The Last Jedi, and I had never said it was like horrible and you shouldn't watch it. I had some problems with it. And I had friends, like people I consider friends that are creators, like mocking me openly. And then their friends got involved. And then it became something I couldn't fire back at. And I finally remember looking like, fuckers, none of us own the Star Wars franchise. Like, I was like, none of us are making money. Can we go back to being normal human beings again and stop worrying about Star Wars? They're going to be okay no matter what we think.
They're going to make money. Yeah, no, I get you. And I saw that too, because I was like, whoa. And I'm like, and then, like, no matter how you responded, it just kept escalating. And I'm like, oh my God, what do you even do at this point?
I just walked away. I was like, flat out, I have better things. And I told people flat out, I have better things to do. I have more positive things to do in my life. And I find that this is true. And this is something I even said at the panel. The minute you say something ugly and negative, you're going to talk more about it. When you say something positive, people will smile and support you. And It's true. When you put negative shit out there, if someone tries to twist your words, you always can just live by, that's not what I meant. I apologize if you felt that way, but that's not how I meant it. You know, that's easy. But if you're putting out negative shit, like you said, if you're preaching about things you hate, people are going to hate on you. But of course, something not to hate is the XCT. Give us the pitch as we leave for the program for today and let everyone get back to their Saturday nights. I know everyone's staying at home right now wanting us to wrap the show up. It's almost been an hour. They're like, come on, I've got a date or something. So take us through. Why should people back at XCT? Give us the elevator pitch.
We have all the greatest warriors from across the world in history meeting not only against each other, but against genetically engineered monsters, having to face waking up in the future and having to fight a 50-foot tall beast. We'll go with that.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, Austin. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know as creators, our time is precious. We're going to have Austin back on sometime later in the year when we talk about his next Kickstarter. And hopefully you guys will see him live when we meet up finally in Chicago at C2E2. C2E2 is a big one for me. It's always one that I wanted to get to. I was so surprised that I got the pro thing. I'm so privileged. I can't wait to be there. Thank you for being on Spoken Sins. And, of course, back XCT. The last day to back it is, do you know off the top of your head?
9 days, so yes.
Yeah. All right, guys. Check out XCT. Hold on, Austin. I'll be with you in just a second. I'm going to say goodnight to our YouTube audience. Any closing remarks before we go?
Wubba lubba dub dub.
There we go. All right. YouTube, we're at it.